Yeah, whenever I go through these lists, one of the things I always think of, I was like, will Lee Matlock be proud of the choice I just made?
Recorded live from Studio 12A in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. You're listening to the Josh and Friends Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Josh and Friends Podcast. I am your host. My name is Josh. And this week, we are here to discuss the 1970s. The year was 1975, and the top movies at the box office include One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Jaws, and Dog Day Afternoon. Some of the nation's most popular TV shows are Sanford and Son, Laverne and Shirley, All in the Family, and the premiere of Saturday Night Live. And in the wide world of boxing, Muhammad Ali defeats Joe Frazier in the Thrilla in Manila. But we are here to discuss the year in rock. And joining me in today's discussion are John and Ethan, and we'll be selecting our top 5 favorite rock albums of 1975, along with our thoughts on the bands, the music, and the industry at the time. So let's get right into this and help me welcome back to the show 2 of my old pals, Mr. John Rasage and Ethan McDonald. Gentlemen, start your engines. Here we go. You guys ready?
Well, I was born ready, Josh.
Wow. Yeah, I was also born.
Yeah, in 75.
Yes.
There you go. There you go, Johnny. 1975, baby. So this is your year. This is your list, buddy. This is your list.
I tainted the list.
Yeah.
I put my touch on it right before 75 went out.
Oh, so
put a little kiss on it.
We are here today to discuss the top rock albums of 1975. So what we're gonna do is let's just go through this here. We're gonna give our top 4 albums, each one of us, and then we're gonna do our honorable mentions. We're gonna do our alternates, alternate lists here, and then we're gonna give our top album of 1975, our favorites. So this is a big year for the music industry. Lots of great albums, huge. Some of the biggest albums of the 70s are in this year. So we had a big task here. So I think we're just gonna start it right off. Ethan, what do you have? What is your number 5 album? What is at your number 5 spot?
Well, first, Josh, thank you for putting in the work. Because once again, that had to be like over 100 albums. Like that list was insane. And when you're looking at all of it, just going like, where do I even begin? And then the fact that like we said before, we sorted out like the Heart album, even though technically it was released in 75 in Canada, it doesn't get released in 76. So that removed Dreamboat Annie, which is obviously an epic album, especially a couple boys from Seattle. That made it kind of easier, but not really. And I'll be honest, I really agonized, because I thought for whatever reason, I kept counting, oh, I've got my 5. And then I went and looked at what I highlighted. I'm like, shit, that's 6. Like, God dang it. How do I have 6? I'm like, well, now what do I got? Yeah. Like, I keep re-ranking it. And I'm like,
I had to keep re-ranking it too. I had to keep okay, wait, I'm going to put this at 2, 4, number. Oh, all right.
I'm still questioning it now. So
me too.
The one that got knocked out of the top 5, I still feel like maybe this is wrong. But so for me, number 5 is an album that, I know I'd heard the songs before that, but were just so beautifully, made iconic in the famous movie Dazed and Confused, obviously based in a Texas high school experience in the year 1976. And there's this awesome scene where Wooderson, one of my favorite characters with, the creepy, I was going to say Woody Harrelson. That's obviously not who played it, but Matthew McConaughey, you know what I like about high school girls, man?
Same thing.
I get older, they stay the same age.
But as he's rolling out to go get concert tickets after hanging out with his buddies and partying all night, and they're going to run down to Houston, I think, to get tickets to Aerosmith and Sweet Emotion, and just like the unbelievable epic track that Sweet Emotion is. I mean, that might be one of the greatest intros to a song.
It's up there.
I mean, ever.
Yes.
I mean, it's just
a movie. Yeah,
it is just excellent. So not only do you have that, you've got a track like Toys in the Attic, which is like, I just love that song. I mean, it might get a little repetitive, but it's just fun, and I like the sound of it.
Oh yeah.
I just have Steven Tyler's voice too. Just that young Steven Tyler's voice, just a little different edge to it.
Yeah.
Than like when they're reborn in the 90s, 80s, and 90s, and kind of getting their second swing at it. But honestly, the song that stands out to me so much is just "Walk This Way" because it's just so iconic. Obviously, the song that resurrects their career when Rick Rubin dusts that sucker off and somehow convinced them to let Run DMC do it because it was like showing how rock and rap are kind of the same family. But that song's just so epic. It's just incredible.
You know, in that song, in "Walk This Way," in this version, I always pull out the triangle, and he's like,
Yeah.
love it. I love it. That's like one of my favorite Josh-isms.
It just sounds incredible too. Like, I don't know. It was just so fun kind of going back to that. But there's some other deep cuts on this too. Like I really like Adam's Apple, Round and Round, and like, not the rap version. This is much better. And just overall, it's just like, it's a solid album. But like, that's the thing for me. I have to have albums that have more than just a couple epic songs. They've got to be pretty solid from start to finish. I mean, no album is 100% amazing every song, especially probably this day. Because man, these guys were cranking out records almost every year. I mean, it's crazy. Like seeing some of these bands. Yeah. Like, how do you create that much good material? So the fact that with so many albums sandwiched in between, they have that many great songs just says, like you said, this industry was booming.
Well, and rock was king, right? Yeah, and on top of that, there were only three channels on TV. Everyone was listening to like records and having parties and drinking and doing drugs, and it must have been a fantastic time to be alive.
Wild time. So yep.
John, how was it? How was it back then being alive? I'm just joking.
It was great.
A lot of eating and shitting and sleeping.
Yeah, same as today.
All right, John, how about you, buddy? What's at your number 5? Number 5.
Yeah, I agree with what Ethan said about the list being quite breathtaking when you look through it. There's so many big names on there. It was almost felt like it was going to be impossible to whittle it down, but so I had to get a little cold-hearted and go through some of the big names right off. And if there was only one or two songs that were amazing and then the rest of the album was mediocre, I crossed them off, which is hard because those couple songs were so good that they almost made the whole album worth it. And then there's quite a few bands I've never ever heard of, and I gave them all a listen. It took a while, but there's a lot of prog rock in there.
Yeah.
And it's not much my cup of tea, so those are easy to knock away. So for number 5, I settled on the Scorpions, In Trance. Which is an album I've never heard of. None of the songs I've ever heard or anything like that, and I did not realize the Scorpions were that old of a band. They had a singer that was dated back to 1969, but their first album I saw was 1972, which was their singer Klaus, who everybody knows from the 80s. He was singing back then, and his voice sounded just as good, actually a little better because it was a lot younger, and their music was really good. Their album in 1972 was kind of different. Like it was more like regular like 60s, late 60s rock music, but with Klaus singing. So that was really interesting. But the 75 album, I'll stop talking about 72, but the 75 album, they had a really good songs on there that I think I'll actually go back and listen to it some more in the future. So Living and Dying, Longing for Fire, and In Trance were 3 of my favorites, and a couple cool ballads on there. So that would be it for my number 5.
Yeah, that's an interesting choice. I didn't see that one coming, but I never see what's coming with John. I really don't.
That's the best part.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Keeps you on your toes.
All right, so my number 5, I went with an album that it's pretty flawless from beginning to end, and a lot of people would call me crazy for even putting this at number 5. But like you said, Ethan and John, I mean, there's like so many damn albums this year. It's an insane list of fantastic albums, or albums that were huge albums for like a lot of artists. So But no band in the 70s made more albums that like flowed together perfectly than this band, in my opinion. Like you could put this record on and like every song, it's like it mixes into it, and it's a full complete album, and it sounds so good. And that album is "Wish You Were Here" by Pink Floyd. And I mean, everyone's heard these songs just on the radio nonstop, right? But like I said, it's so flawless because the songs are so good. But I mean, shit, there's only 5 songs on the album. So
Crazy,
it's like,
yeah.
I mean, it's a full album, but
than like Queen's album that has 12 songs. Like, how is that possible?
Yeah, but a lot of these songs are like super long, right? Like, so Roy Harper, who actually has an album on this list, is not a guy that's like well known in the States, obviously, but he's the guy that sings lead vocals on "Have a Cigar," which is one of my favorite songs on the album.
Oh.
The only thing that I don't like about this album, which is some other Pink Floyd albums, is it takes like 10 minutes for the goddamn song to start. So that's the one thing that it's kind of like Tool. I'm like, I don't revisit a lot of Tool because, you know, they're kind of in the same vein where it's like, all right, I love this band, but it's like, I don't want like a 4-minute, you know, intro. Sometimes I'm in the mood, but sometimes, most of the time I'm not. So yeah, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, Welcome to the Machine, Have a Cigar, Wish You Were Here, all huge, great songs. That is my number 5 album. Ethan?
Gosh, we're already at number 4? Shit. Okay. So yeah, well done, Josh. My number 4 album is not going to be a surprise to you guys. I can't imagine it's on a lot of other people's top 5, but obviously being the resident metalhead, the band that you could credit as the birth of true metal, when you've got the Prince of Darkness singing, you've got Tony Iommi, like one of the greatest lead guitarists that nobody really gives credit to. Geezer Butler on bass. I mean, just it's a complete band. And by no means is it probably Black Sabbath's strongest album, but it's got tracks on there that, to me, this was like them really returning to their hard edge after they did some really strange stuff. I love progressive stuff on the albums before. I want to say it's like maybe their 6th. I could be wrong, but like their 6th studio album. So Sabotage by Sabbath. And for me, like, the fact that you've got songs like Hole in the Sky. And then like some of these songs, for me, the first time hearing them was right around when we were in high school, you guys. There was this album that came out called Nativity in Black. And it was a bunch of like 90s metal bands covering Sabbath songs. And I was like, holy shit, this song's so cool. And I'm like, I got to go back. Because, I mean, of course I heard Paranoid and Iron Man and all the basic ones. But I didn't know some of these tracks. And then I go back and listen. I'm like, you know, Sepultura, a band I love, like a Brazilian speed metal band, covers Hole in the Sky. And I listened to it, and I'm like, holy shit, man, this doesn't sound that different than the original. Like, this is really crazy. The guitars, I also love the song off that one, Symptom of the Universe. I think that's actually the Sepultura cover, but it's like crushing and hard, and like the writ, like this weird long 9-minute epic. Like, they've got some other deep cuts on there too. Like, a lot of people don't talk about like Am I Going Insane, which has got this weird, like really 60s, like you feel like you're on drugs or mushrooms just listening to it.
Yeah.
But Ozzy's voice is just incredible. Some of the solos, the musicianship. Black Sabbath Sabotage for me is just hard to beat. Early Ozzy, man. His voice is just so haunting and terrifying. And this album just did a great job. So for me, number 4, I had to put some Sabbath on here or else I wouldn't be a metalhead. So that's my choice.
All right. Nice choice. Johnny?
Yeah, I struggled. I had that Sabbath album on my list, off my list, up and down. Good stuff, man. So my number 4 is probably going in the opposite direction. This guy is in one of the most famous bands ever, and I don't know if many people know he had a solo career, and that is Ronnie Wood.
Nice.
I think you, Josh, told me about him to check out some of his solo work, and I was blown away. I really like his solo work, and I just think he's really underrated, considering he is in the Stones and did a lot with the Faces. So he's in these 2 big bands with Rod Stewart, and he's still releasing solo albums. It's kind of crazy. And this particular album had a great mix of like rock, just standard early 70s, 60s, late 60s style rock music, some funk, some blues type music. And man, those funky clavies on a few of those songs there, I almost got up and twerked in front of my coworkers yesterday. They like it when I do that.
He's a pretty good singer too. Like he did that a couple of years before this in like 73 or something like that. He did that Ooh La La song.
I wish that I knew what I know now.
I always thought it was Rod Stewart,
Yeah.
but actually, they sound a lot alike, but
It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
kind of same haircuts too.
yeah.
They do. That's a good point.
But one of them got a lot more ass.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any more thoughts on that album?
Nah.
All right. Okay.
Good.
All right. Awesome.
All right,
Awesome.
then.
Right on. All right. So for me, my number 4 album, man, this is way out there for me. I did not see this coming for me. This is a very weird choice. And
Intrigued.
I have not been a fan of this person's music, mostly because of the later work. And I was pretty vocal about it too. I was like, ugh, just no, what? Like people would say like, yeah, I'm a big fan of this person. And I was like, really? I'm like, ugh. So I'd kind of like pass by this album and I started listening to the songs and I was like, holy crap, this is really good. It's really, it's really connecting with me for whatever reason. And so the album is Horses by Patti Smith.
Yeah.
And so I
Good
kept
album.
coming back to this album. I kept hearing a couple songs and I was like, all right, I gotta put up the full album here. And I listened to the full album and I'm like, dude, this is crazy. So many critics actually consider this to be one of the very first punk albums.
Wow.
Some of them consider it to be the first punk album. To me, it actually sounds kind of like the classic like Riot Girl like style of rock without the super crunchy guitars. Like,
Yeah.
But compared to the other albums on this list, it sounds so modern, like really, really modern. Like it could have been released in the 90s to me. Like it could have been released in like, sounds like so many artists that released albums in the 90s, like these female artists, right?
Check it out.
And a ton of, like, obviously it inspired a ton of people. One of them is Michael Stipe.
And you've been a big fan of hers since you were a teenager.
15, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I bought her record the day it came out, and it had a really profound impact on me. It made me decide that I wanted to be a musician.
He said, I bought this album when I was in high school. And he said, it, quote, tore his limbs off and then put them back in a whole different order. I'm like,
Awkward.
Maybe
like,
that's where we
that's
get a third
crazy.
arm from.
wow. Maybe, yeah.
Maybe that explains his dancing.
Yeah, right? You could tell, like, on some of these songs, Courtney Love definitely ripped off her style, like, almost completely.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I could see that.
dude, this sounds just like a Courtney Love song, except she sings better than Courtney Love
Yeah.
and is more talented.
Yeah.
But yeah, so no, the first 3 songs especially really are crazy, and the last few songs in the album are amazing. That album is, if you haven't checked it out and you're like really anti Patti Smith, like I had been pretty much my entire life, because I heard her later stuff, which is not really fair, because a lot of people's first albums are their best albums. We have this conversation all the time. Check this album out. Probably not everyone's cup of tea, but definitely check it out.
Quick Courtney Love joke just for everybody.
Yeah,
You
okay.
remember what the difference was between Courtney Love and Wayne Gretzky? Wayne actually showers after 3 periods. Remember that one from high school? Sorry.
That's a classic.
All right.
A quick comment on Patti Smith. I do like that album a lot, and one of my favorite parts of it is it kind of kicked off the whole late 70s, early 80s New York punk, graffiti, hip-hop art scene that I love so much. and she was a big part of that and inspired a lot of those people that came after her. So that album has a good little place in my heart. CBGB.
CBGB, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, Ethan, we are on to the number 3 albums. We're already at number 3, buddy.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
So what do you have for your number 3?
Number 3 might be here partly just because of like strings on my heart for a couple reasons. Number one, my dad loved these guys, and like I heard a lot of this as a child. In fact, a really seminal moment of watching a movie that this band had made that I was never meant to see at age 7, but my dad, I think, was drunk and thought I was his friend from work. Second, going with my boys, and I don't recall, because guys, I've been hitting the head a lot, so my memory is exactly who, but do you remember going to the Seattle Center to watch laser shows?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Smoke up in the laser?
That was awesome.
And so laser
So
shows
fun.
for this band, that's another heartstring. And then I remember being down in John's basement. It wasn't this album, where we sunk up Dark Side of the Moon with the Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
Like there's just, I have so many of these weird, cool moments of, besides all the head trauma and the CTE that's setting in, that I still remember of just like these cool things about Pink Floyd. And so like, you've already talked about it, Josh, so I won't spend a ton of time, but like from Laser Floyd shows where I'm pretty sure those middle 3 songs almost every time we're in that laser show, maybe not Welcome to the Machine, but like talk about super cool, trippy, like it was just like music I never heard, like instruments I've never heard, the way they mixed it, the progressive, and then this the shredding blues guitar that would just come in, and my dad would just go absolutely nuts about their solos and all the music, like Have a Cigar and Wish You Were just, it's
great.
to me, it's not their quintessential albums. Like obviously The Wall and Dark Side of the Moon were the ones my dad listened to way more, but this album still just like, oh, it's just so good. And so for me, Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here is my number 3, just for all those great memories. And
I had it higher. I had it higher on my list. I just like,
at the last
like
moment,
you guys said,
had to
it was
make
just
the
like,
switch. Like it's so hard. So yeah, well, I just literally switched it. Like I literally wrote it behind Black Sabbath, and I'm like, I don't know, Black Sabbath. I love Black Sabbath. That's not their best album. It's Pink Floyd's better. So I just made the switch.
all right. Well, Johnny?
Yeah. Man, Pink Floyd, so innovative. Totally agree. I think one of my reasons Pink Floyd didn't make that list is because Welcome to the Machine makes me feel sad.
I get that.
And so on the opposite emotion, I went with the happy album.
Ooh.
And that is Queen, A Night at the Opera.
Nice.
Classic.
I mean, you can't beat Brian May's guitar and Freddie Mercury's vocals. I mean, even if you don't like the song, they're still going to be amazing. It's a fun album. A couple songs I never actually heard: Seaside Rendezvous, Lazing on a Sunday. They're almost kind of like Paul McCartney granny songs.
Yeah, Beatlesque. Very Beatlesque. Yeah.
And they're like, of course, You're My Best Friend, another happy little tune. And then the second to the last song, Bohemian Rhapsody, is one of the best songs ever.
Yeah.
And it kind of blew me away that it was that late in the album, but it's a nice little way to go out, I guess.
Don't they have
So-
like God Save the Queen at the very end? And it's like it's like a minute long. It's like it's almost kind of like a hidden track. Is that like
It's
one
like
of the
Her
first hidden
Majesty.
tracks? It's like
Yeah.
it's kind of weird, but yeah. No,
It
that's
made
a
me
solid
think of Her
track.
Majesty at the end of the album. It's
Right.
like a minute long, and
Exactly.
I was like, after Bohemian Rhapsody, but then I was like, well, after the end, they had Her Majesty, and so I guess kind of made sense.
Yeah.
So that was my number 3.
I always love the song "The Prophet" on that. That's like super long, like kind of
Yeah, it was
I
like,
guess,
was it
proggy
11
song.
minutes?
Yeah, it's so good though. I used to listen to that, and I'd be like, dude, this is so crazy. It gets like all crazy and like in the middle, and I'm like, whoa, this is pretty trippy, man.
Mhm.
I always like that song. Yeah. So is it me? Am I up here?
You're up.
You're up.
All right. So the band who released my number 3 favorite album of 1975 is probably the most legendary rock act of the 70s. If you can't get it by there. The only reason I didn't rank this higher on my list is because I think Ethan kind of said this for him. Song for song, it's not the strongest, especially with their discography, their catalog here. But Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin some of their best songs. Kashmir, Down by the Seaside, 10 Years Gone, all some of my favorite songs they ever did. But it's side 4 that's like so it's like John and I have had this discussion about the White Album. We're like, yeah, you could cut songs from the White Album. Like, you could cut songs. Like, but I guess if you're making a double album, I mean, why not? I don't know. Because I know that they took a bunch of songs that were previously released and they threw them on this album too. But God, I mean, this song's just packed with some of the best songs of the 70s, especially by this band. And it's not my favorite album by Led Zeppelin, but it's their last like great classic album that, you know, in my opinion, because after this came Presence and then In Through the Outdoor. All right. But up until this point, they're just killing it. And that's usually like the peak of a band. Like, I have so many goddamn songs that I will just put out a fucking double album. Like, you know. So Custard Pie, The Rover, Houses of the Holy, Boogie with Stu. I always loved Boogie with Stu.
Yeah. So one of our friends from high school, they named their band after that. It was like Stooky or whatever I can't remember. It was like, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I think I saw them.
Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah, so that is my number, 3? That's my number 3 album, is Led Zeppelin's Physical Graffiti. Ethan, what do you have for number 2?
Wow, here we are at 2 already. Well, 2, once again, I mean, the nice thing is I feel like some of these we're going to talk about a little bit because it's hard to deny these. So this album was previously mentioned by my boy, Big Jabita, and that's A Night at the Opera by Queen. Obviously, you know, we weren't alive in 75, so my introduction to Bohemian Rhapsody, of course, was Wayne's World, and just how amazing Wayne's World, like, and that song, I'm just like, what is this? You know, and then I knew some Queen, obviously, but then it's like, I mean, that album, seeing the whole movie about Queen, too, just like how hard of a sell this was to the record company. Like, what do you mean you're going to sell this thing that you're doing this weird operatic, doing these weird voices, to just like the whole musical variance, the fact that they have 4 members of this band that can all write and bring their own flair. Like, you guys already mentioned some songs, but like a song that stood out to me is a song called 39. That's like got this amazing acoustic intro that like sounds like folk song compared to some of the songs you're talking about that sound like Beatles, to the part of Bohemian Rhapsody, 1 Minute at Opera, then with one of the most kick-ass breakdowns that goes like hardcore metal kind of, you know, so you think you can laugh at me, spit in my eye, like all this like shred. It's like, what is this? This is amazing. I also love Death on Two Legs. I don't know why, but like the first track right off the bat, just cool. Like, what's it? Can't go wrong with Freddie Mercury, the greatest frontman and maybe the greatest rock vocalist of all time. And being a Seattle guy, that's stuff because I mean, Chris is up there, my Cornell, but I mean, it's just hard. You can't deny Freddie Mercury, man. I mean, it's just, it's
insane
incredible.
vocals, insane
and
vocals.
just like what it meant to the music industry, because I feel like some other bands, obviously Beatles and Stones, that do a lot of variation too, but like to once again just do like, we're going to make music and the record company's going to suck it and take it. And regardless if you think this is weird or not, we're going to make songs that are all over the place of what we want to make. And just like, I mean, part of just the brilliance of this band and just what they create, the art they create, and just not afraid to push the boundaries. Like, thank God there's people like that, because man, the one thing I'll say is when I was trying to grind through a lot of these, there's a lot of these albums that maybe it's not, I don't know, maybe I know what prog rock means all the time, but there's like, some of the shit is not bad, but it kind of sounds like it carries the same tune. There's no arguing this album stands alone for what it sounds like. There's not many albums that sound like this with all the variants. So
it's very bizarre. Like, but it's really a good bizarre. It's like,
it is.
Yeah. And it's the, you know, by 75, the production is so insane. Like it's so well produced.
Yeah.
It sounds as good as a lot of albums do now, which is crazy because they're, you know, cutting tape and shit. Like, you know, I don't know how I don't even understand how they edited back then. It's crazy.
Magic.
The song I didn't realize was on this album is Love of My Life. Like I've heard it.
Yeah.
Sarah really got Sarah. Like this is
girls love that song.
Well, it's like
John probably not so much, but girls love.
It's a ballad,
song.
Yeah. Sarah's like all-time favorite band is Queen. Like she loves Queen. So we got deep after that movie. She wanted to listen to it all the time, and that song came up all the time. And I just like, I didn't know where to place it. Like I had no idea it was on this album. So that one kind of caught my attention too. Obviously, it's pretty popular, but I didn't know because I'm not a big ballad guy either. Imagine that, the metal guy. So yeah, that's my number 2. What about you, John?
You're a closet guy.
Yeah, there you go.
So I'm gonna circle back and cover another album that was recently touched on, and that's Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti. So, what Josh said was a lot of the same things I was going to say. One thought, though, was I always thought Boogie with Stew was called Boogaloo Stew.
I love it.
Like a type of soup that makes you dance or something. I don't know.
That sounds right. Does it smell like millipede, though? No.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Probably not. 'Cause then you wouldn't want to eat it.
No, that's true.
I mean, a third of the songs on this album are on their greatest hits.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I mean, this was a lot of, like, big bands. Like, when I saw George Harrison and John Lennon on there, I got excited, but I knew John Lennon's rock and roll album wasn't that great. And I never heard of George Harrison's album, so I thought maybe it might be a diamond in the rough, but it was just a piece of coal. The first song was all right, and I was like, oh, okay. Let's see what's the next song. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so Zeppelin was able to put out a double album with so many great songs on it. And I don't know, how many albums did they put out before this? It was like every year since like the late 60s.
So they had Zeppelin 1, Zeppelin 2, Zeppelin 3, Zeppelin 4, House of the Holy.
And this was
and then this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty wild.
And so,
that's an insane run.
Yeah. I know.
And all those albums are fantastic. Like,
yeah.
So it's pretty crazy. Then I even like the next album, Presence. It's possibly their hardest album, but it's lacking kind of like the catchy, hits, I'd like it, but it's just, yeah.
And I never understood why Houses of the Holy is on this album and not on Houses of the Holy album.
Well, I read something, and this is weird, but I read something where they actually recorded it way, way earlier. But the problem is it sounded too much like they thought Dancing Days was a better song comparatively. And they thought they were just too much same vibe. So they just kept holding it. And like Josh said, when they got done recording the 8 new tracks or whatever it was, and they realized, oh shit, we filled 2.5 sides of an LP. The only reason they went and put other songs and took this unreleased stuff was to make it so that they had 4 sides. And that's the only reason they did a double album, because they didn't want to cut, even though arguably we could. So they brought up this other stuff. I'm like, that blows my mind. And here's a song that's like super freaking good. Like, it's just been sitting since like the second or third album in the chamber because it's been too much. Like, okay.
Oops, we wrote too many great songs.
Oh shit! Got this one just sitting.
Dang it! Not again.
Yeah, like I said, like these guys that put out these double albums. I mean, they're just they're at the peak of their creativity and artistic. They want to put out as much stuff that they can because it's in their head and they're artists. So they like, I have to have everybody hear this shit, even if not all of it is And by that point, like in these careers of these artists, they have the power to do so. They're like, how many albums have we sold previously? They're like, look, you got a point. You have a point. Like, what are you gonna do?
Well, it's always weird too. There's always people who love some of those weird tracks, but they don't speak to me. But like, my dad always had weird love affairs with some of the strangest tracks on Zeppelin albums. Like, for whatever reason, they spoke to him, and it's just like you never know what's gonna hit you. Right. So strange.
Yeah, your dad, my dad, they smoke pot.
Yeah, there you go.
There's like a lot of
drugs,
pot smoking songs. It's like, oh, dude, yeah, this is the 11-minute song. All right, let's.
I love this, man. I think I ate 3 bags of Doritos once.
Maybe they like stew.
Maybe they do. Boogie with stew.
Yeah.
Boogaloo stew, baby.
Oh, here's Boogaloo stew.
Yeah.
All right, so what do we? Who's up now? Is it me?
Did you give your second one?
Is it me? Is this number 2?
Yeah, number 2.
Who does number 2 work for?
Now, okay. Drop a deuce on us, Josh. What do you got?
All right. Okay. So for my number 2 album, it includes the song that got me into this band. So one of my favorite groups of the 70s and one of the most underrated singers, songwriters, producers in the history of rock and roll, if you're asking me, Mr. Jeff Lynne. The album is Face the Music by the Electric Light Orchestra. This includes the radio hits Evil Woman and Strange Magic.
Yep.
But equally as good, in my opinion, are the rock staples Fire on High and one of my all-time favorites, the original Knight Rider. which is Knight Rider. And the songs that I really, really like on this album are so strong that it overpowers the songs that are not as strong, but I still like the album tracks on this one. It's like, they're okay. They're okay. There's like a song that's called Waterfall, decent. Poker is almost a punk rock or a new wave song. And there's a song called Down Hometown, which has a country flair, and it's probably might be the weakest song on the album, but it's still catchy. It's still catchy because it's Jeff Lynne, and Jeff Lynne he doesn't put out dog poop. He puts out good stuff. So one Summer Dream, very Beatlesque, very dreamy. John Racich probably hates it, but I like it. But so that is my number 2 album is ELO Face the Music. And just for the record, John and I kind of discovered ELO at the same time, which is
Yep.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal for me.
Remember how hard we were looking for that Johnny Be Good song?
Yeah.
We're like buying records just to see if it was
it was their
oh
first,
yeah, Roll Over Beethoven. That's
yeah,
right.
like it was on like their first album or something, or like, which is not a very popular album. So it had to be like on a compilation. We're like, where is this damn song? Where was this? Like, because
we
like
found it in a thrift store.
We had like books. We had like reference books, but we didn't have like, the internet. Like the internet was just coming out. So like we did like try to figure out everything out, like ask like record guys and like, hey, do you know this? They're like, so you say it was a lot, tougher to learn music back in the day. You had to actually do crazy research. That's why like I have all these books. Like I used to read books just like nonstop, like all the time, like read all these encyclopedias and all it's a mess. Lots of just listening to songs in the garage by myself, like flipping through books with a flashlight, just studying these albums.
We're buying CDs with a cool name, hoping it was good.
We're staring at John's black light posters and like tripping out on no drugs. How is that even possible? What are we doing in here? Yeah,
It's got to be weird enough.
High on life.
Just got to get weird.
All right, guys. So now that we gave our top 4, now it's time for our runner-ups. So our runner-up selections are honorable mentions. So Ethan, what do you have for your honorable mentions?
I mean, this will probably make it very clear what my number 1 is to you guys, but some ones I had on here, like, I'll be honest, like, there might not be a more kick-ass song. I always thought, like, if I were to be a Major League Baseball player and I had walk-up music for when I was coming up to bat, how would it not be? Now you're messing with a son of a bitch. I go Nazareth, Hair of the Dog, man. Like on that album, I love Hurts. Even like don't usually love the ballads, like, but that one once again iconic. I mean, I know Lee hates Dazed and Confused because that dumbass didn't remember that Ben Affleck was in it. I won a bet in college, but I love Dazed and Confused. I don't even know what the hell. Yeah, that movie is just so awesome. So I mean, I have Nazareth on there. I've got Foghat too. Once again, hey, big surprise. Part of the big soundtrack is Fool for the City, and obviously Slow Rider. Just like Slow Ride, like other than Sweet Emotion, might be one of the coolest like cruising songs in the history of. And the fact these both came out in '75 is crazy. Yeah. I don't know how you would ever deny Fleetwood Mac. Partly because if I did, I'm scared Danny Marsh might hunt me down. And, but like Rhiannon, Landslide. I mean, Landslide to me might be one of my favorite Fleetwood Mac songs of all time. And
it's very ballad-esque.
Yeah, it is. But I can't. I mean, there's something about, like you said, I'm a closet ballad lover. Whatever, Josh. Say You Love Me.
Coming out. You're coming out, man. So you're coming out party.
You Love Me,
I'm here for it.
Any song Christy McVie sings, I'm just not a huge. I don't know. She just doesn't do it for me. But I know that's a big hit on it. But so that album was on my honorable mention. Ted Nugent, dude, Stranglehold might be. That song is badass. And Hey Baby, I think is also on that one, if I'm not mistaken. Like the fact that Nugent was smart enough to get someone else to sing on that album. But his guitar's like Stranglehold once again, too, just like a super amazing song. Yeah. But the one that really broke my heart, the one that I still think maybe I messed up, but I need to get my top 5. And I know this is not everybody's, it's such a weird album. Like I want to say the first half of it's like recorded live. And then the second half of it is like studio recorded songs. And it's Fandango by ZZ Top. I fucking love old 70s ZZ Top.
That makes sense.
Whoever the second singer is, like, because I know eventually he must leave the band and it's pretty much Billy Gibbons.
Yeah,
whoever
Billy Gibbons and Dusty. He just died.
Dude, yeah. Dude, come on. I mean, Tush is such an amazing song. But I mean, I even love Balinese. The Blue Jean Blues on this. Like, there's so many great tracks. Mexican Blackbird makes me laugh my ass off. I'm like, what is this? Like, this is a song just for John. Like, I'm like, dude, did John write this? Heard It on the X. Like, just their ability to shred. I mean, it is music that literally, not to quote my movie again that I love, if it's confused, but like, this is the music we say, we only came here to do two things: kick some ass and drink some beer. We're almost out of beer. Like, it's just like this. I don't know. I just love 70s ZZ Top. Like a couple years ago, I was just getting into like, I can't remember one of the artists I like that's kind of more modern, like maybe a 90s band said, like they had a playlist of songs they just can't stop listening to. And there was like 7 ZZ Top songs that weren't big ZZ Top hits, and they were all 70 songs. And I'm like, and Just Got Paid Now is something everybody knows, but like we're nationwide and all there's these songs. I'm like, I don't know, this is just such kick ass, badass, this dirty Texas me. I don't know. So like, I still feel like I somehow screwed up by not putting that in my top 5. But man, I just love that album. So that's my runners up, you guys.
That threw me off. I didn't realize that it was like the first half was live. I was listening to it. I was like, this is a live album. I was like, oh, okay. I'm not gonna put this on my list because it's like the songs I liked were later on.
Yeah. So to get to the second half of it, that's where all the studio stuff was. It was like, holy crap. And great.
I was burning through stuff at that point. It's like, all right.
The list is so overwhelming, John. I get it, man.
So, John, what do you have for runner-ups?
Okay, so I got a couple. I want to do the best unknown band I never heard of. And it was Armageddon with their album Armageddon. A lot of same name album band names on this list, but to me they kind of sound like a Black Sabbath, early Pink Floyd prog rock band, and this is kind of cool. So that was kind of neat. I mean, they didn't make the list or anything, but you know, I was definitely pleased with hearing something I didn't know. And then my biggest disappointment, so not a runner-up, was Roxy Music Siren. Because the album, it starts with that "Love Is the Drug" song.
Yes.
No, that's a pretty sweet song, dude.
From Goodfellas.
Yeah, and it's just, it's a sweet song, dude. It's got like sweet thumping bass groove going on, and then after that, it turns into this like mushy dog poop.
Like, what is this? What is this?
Yeah, I'm like, what happened? Where am I?
I it's funny you say that because I you always hear Roxy Music. Oh shit, yeah, Roxy Music. So like I long ago I went back and I was like, all right, I'm going to give Roxy Music a chance. Kind of like when probably about the same time I tried to give Frank Zappa a chance, and I was like,
yeah, my dad.
Ooh, man, this is not weird. Me. This is not my style, man. This is not my style. I'm not into this. Yeah, but I do like that song. I like that one song.
Yeah. So my real runner-up is. You're going to love this. Great Googly Moogly. It's Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention.
Yeah. John McDonald approves.
That's like one of his that's like one of his biggest albums I heard.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
Yeah, it's pretty good. If it actually was 1974 podcast, dude, that album, apostrophe, that would be my number 2. It's got a song on there called Nanook Rubs It. And another one called "Don't Eat Yellow Snow."
Yeah, my dad played that one for me all the time.
Dude, how can you not love that?
I do.
I mean, Zappa is a weird, brilliant man, and I appreciate that stuff.
His interviews were epic.
They were so good.
Dude, yeah, so smart.
I mean, his music is a journey. I feel like if I had used psychedelics while listening to this album, I'd probably unlock some sort of secret of the universe or something.
And him and John Denver and Dee Snider fighting for free speech.
Yeah.
It's amazing stuff.
They should have done an album.
It's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome.
They should have.
Any other runner-ups? Anything else to note?
No, I'm good. I wanted to top it off on the old
that's good stuff.
Zappa there.
I love it.
Nice.
I love it.
Josh, what about
Classic
you, buddy?
John, I love it. Classic John. All right, I have some runner-ups, and I'm going to pull an Ethan. I have several runner-ups here.
Is this a list of 10 plus? How many we got here?
No, it's not 10, but I have 5 here. So, all right. So I'm going to go through them pretty quick here. So Alice Cooper, Welcome to My Nightmare. So this album is it's weird because this album, it's the first album that he adopted Alice Cooper as his actual name instead of the band's name. And I think it's like kind of a cool concept of an album, because if you play the songs in a row, it describes the nightmares of a boy named Steven. And the song Devil's Food includes Vincent Price talking. And this precedes, like, you remember Michael Jackson at the end of the Thriller. It's like 7 years before that. I'm like, whoa, maybe that's where you got the idea to like have him talk in the song. It's creepy, but it's kind of cool.
You don't want to wake up, do you?
Well, I wouldn't mind.
Well, you can't wake up.
It's almost like you're listening to a movie or like some sort of musical or something. It's very weird. You're like, oh yeah, Alice Cooper, and then you turn this on and you're like, what is this? This is weird. And then it has the song Steven is like super creepy, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, and it sounds like you could tell like Rob Zombie was like really into this. He's like I could see Rob Zombie taking notes. And he's like, holy shit, this is what I'm gonna do. And it's like you could tell it's like inspired by The Exorcist that came out a couple of years like prior to this. And like you know how Zombie started incorporating the like his wife like the like, and it's like this sounds like that. You're like, what is this? Like it's like weird. So I just put that on because it's super weird. Like that's a weird album to me. Jen hated it. Jen was like, that's definitely not going to be on my list. I'm like,
I liked it. It was interesting.
Like, all right.
It was more than I expected it to be. That's for sure.
As Ethan mentioned, Ted Nugent is on the list. So long before this guy was deer hunting, flag waving, right wing, politics head. He was in the Amboy Dukes before this, and left probably because they were all drunk and high and shit. And he's like, all right, can we make music here? Like, I mean, fuck, dude, come on, let's get this going. So like he formed that band, and he got, like you were talking about, Ethan, Derek St. Holmes as the singer. And thank God he did, like you said, thank God he did, because if you listen to the vocals on, because he does sing some songs on this, like Motor City Madhouse. That is, listen, the guitars are awesome, but holy shit, he sucks at singing on that song. It is horrible. But Derek St. Holmes, he sings the good songs on this. Like, obviously, Hey Baby is like his song basically on this album. Just what the doctor ordered, that's a good one. Snakeskin Cowboys, but obviously Stranglehold's fucking just brilliant. Killer. It's like one of the best songs of the 70s. Foghat. Ethan mentioned Foghat. So first off, I don't know why, but for the longest time, this is crazy. I always thought Foghat was like from the United States. I did not know that they were from England, London, England. I'm like, first off, they look like they're like fucking, they just look so American. Maybe it's because like some of their albums were actually produced and recorded, in the States. Maybe they just had this super connection with
this Southern rock or something.
Yeah. Like, I'm like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen them live, like clips of them live. Holy shit.
I heard that.
I did in 1975. I saw them live.
Oh, look at this guy over here. Look at this guy. Yeah, you might have, John, because they were on Midnight Special. They're on the Midnight Special, and they're doing that I Just Want to Make Love to You song. Dude, killer. I'm like, wow. I really like that album. It has Fool for the City and Slow Ride. But I even like the ballad. Don't make fun of me. The ballad is Take It or Leave It. Fantastic song.
Cool.
Don't you
the ladies that are listening, they might like this, but
sure.
I know you guys.
Don't you think a hat made of fog would be magical?
I think
a hat with fog.
A hat made of fog would be magical.
Yeah, a fog hat would be nice. As long as it's that stinky fog.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, don't want to smell like sulfuric or anything like that.
No.
All right, so my number 2 album of my runner-ups. I'm almost to my number 1 of runner-ups. My number 2 is you guys already talked about it. Phantom of the Opera. That was my number 2.
Phantom of the Opera.
What's that?
Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, I'm sorry. Night of the Opera. Sorry. Yeah. Phantom of the Opera is pretty fantastic too. But yeah, this one's a little bit better in my opinion. And then my number one runner-up was Fleetwood Mac, self-titled Fleetwood Mac. It's the first album they recorded with Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham. And vehemently disagree with Ethan. I love Christine McVie's vocals. Love her. I almost like her more than Stevie Nicks'. She wasn't as hot. She wasn't as hot. I know Ethan's like, oh, she wasn't even hot. She played the keyboard.
But you know what? Like some sort of weird. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman half the time.
She's a man, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
She's fantastic. Don't you dare.
Sorry,
dare.
Josh. If Danny to punch
if Danny listens to this, he's gonna fucking cut your balls off.
He's gonna punch me. Maybe I could go look at one of his out of focus pictures he took at the concert. They're on his walls.
Oh, Danny, good old Danny.
I love that guy. He's a legend.
So yeah, those are my runner-ups. Ethan, here we are. The number one album of 1975. What do you have at the top of your list?
Well, there's not much to say about it because we've talked about it so much, but I'm there, which is Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti. And for me, that's, like I said, I get what you guys are saying because yes, the complete album. But the problem is this is a complete album and then another album. So had they cut it down and you made it one album and just took their best songs, how is this not right there with all the best Zeppelin albums? I mean, like I said, Kashmir, I have the best memories of being in international politics at Central Washington University, playing this board game in class for international politics. There's no chance in it. You're doing this war game. We were all Turkey, and we had this guy who's just a character. Every time we went to submit our moves, he brought a boombox and played Kashmir as we all walked up in unison to the front of the class and submitted our moves. This epic moment of da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. This is unbelievable. There's so much, just good memories to this. My dad loved Zeppelin too. It was just another one of those bands. Whenever I'd play him Metallica or my music, he'd always well, now you got to listen to this. And I was like, man, how do you deny it? It was so good. So I just,
it's great.
Some probably fond memories, some ties to my dad. The fact that, like you said, the Rover, I was that's a song that I don't hear people talk about as much. That to me is just what an incredible song. I know it's
it's funny too because Robert Plant sings so differently on a lot of these songs too, right?
He does.
Yeah.
Some of
it's sings super high and then he sings you're down. You're whoa. It's what is the same guy? And it's raspy and it's what's going on here? It's crazy. Are there two lead singers in this band or what's going on here?
And that's and maybe it's just that later point in the career we could do a few more things, but I like some of the weird deep cuts that maybe other people Trampled Underfoot's probably not one to call a deep cut because I know it's a pretty popular song off of that, but In My Time of Dying, and I really like Black Country Woman. I don't know what it is. That's really folky and weird, dirty country song. It's just good. Sick Again, one of the very last tracks, just has some really cool Robert Plant. Just sounds like Robert Plant kind of a jam track that they just put some lyrics over, but when he jams, but Jimmy Page, when he's just jamming, it's just that dude can jam out. What the hell? There's just things there with his fast fingering, if you will, that is just it's impressive. So I don't want to get you turned on, Josh. I don't want to get you too excited over it.
Jimmy Page, man, he's just amazing,
unreal.
Amazing.
That was so hard because at one point I had different albums in a whole different order, but in the end, this is where I landed.
All right,
Johnny. I feel
Johnny.
I screwed up not putting ZZ Top in the top 5, though. I'm still mad at myself. All right, so Johnny, go.
Do you remember that box set I had of CDs of Led Zeppelin that had 5 or 6 CDs in it? It was in that big old box.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of songs on that Physical Graffiti album
as there should be
that I'd never heard of on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was just discovering all these deeper cuts that I was like, dang, man, that's good. And then I started hearing them on this album because I couldn't remember the names of any of them. And that's why it made it up to number 2 for me. So here at my number 1 spot,
fascinated.
We're gonna have to do maybe call up our boy Danny Marsh and see what he thinks.
Oh, nice!
I'm gonna go with the Fleetwood Mac.
Awesome.
So yeah. This album was almost half of their greatest hits.
Pretty much.
If this album and Rumors had been a double album, it would have been the greatest double album since Mozart's Piano Concerto 21.
Wow.
And we all know that
fantastic album. It's packed with some of their best songs.
Yeah. And
it is.
It has both my favorite Stevie Nicks songs and Christy McVie songs on there.
What's your favorite Stevie Nicks songs? Rhiannon?
Yeah.
There's Rhiannon, Crystal, and
did she sing Landslide?
Landslide?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Landslide's awesome, but Billy Corgan did it better.
Oh.
Nah, just kidding.
Oh, I was like, I was about to start dry heaving.
God.
Yeah, I mean,
well, it even has it has Lindsey Buckingham doing Monday Morning, but it also has his bluesy rocker at the very end with "I'm So Afraid," which is kind of like the one thing that people like my dad and maybe Ethan's dad complained about with the new Fleetwood Mac is the old Fleetwood Mac was like blues rock. They were like straight up like blues rock band, and then this was like to the old school Fleetwood Mac people. This is like kind of, I don't even know what it's like. Like, it's like, it would be kind of like listening to old Metallica and then trying to listen to like, you know, Reload or something. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So weird.
But this is like, it's so good that it's like, it's hard to deny that it's, you know, it's pop. It's kind of like pop rock, but that song to me, I'm So Afraid, that was in concert. Like if you see like concerts of their live performances, Lindsey Buckingham is not a slouch on the guitar. He's the reason that Mick Fleetwood got them into the band is because of his guitar work, and he's a fantastic guitarist.
That World Turning.
Yeah, he did that with Christian McVie, and I love that song. I love that song. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine these Christine McVie and then these two other hooligans coming into the studio, and now you got this band that is nothing like the band before, and they're suddenly like cranking out these songs that
you know who likes
worldwide.
Them? You know who is the biggest fan of Fleetwood Mac?
No.
Mick Fleetwood. He's like, holy shit, this is the greatest fucking thing ever.
I mean, has there ever been another band that made such amazing songs while every member were breaking each other's hearts? They're basically hurting each other for inspiration to write amazing songs.
There's Behind the Music's about heart and, you know, the Eagles, but those bands, when they got in fights, that was pretty much the end of the run of those bands for a while. Yeah. So, all right. So, any other thoughts on Danny Marsh's Fleetwood Mac? People are like, who the hell is this Danny Marsh guy? Who's this?
I know. You need to slap. You got to slap a picture up. I'll send you one.
I got some too. I could send you some.
All right. So my number one album of 1975. It's not only the best album by this band, but song for song, it might not be the best song for song, because I still might think that Pink Floyd has the best flowing like album, like song for song. It's like super strong. But for me, the songs that I love on this album, it all comes together with this band. The songs are catchy. The guitars are killer. The lead vocals are so strong. And the production is so top notch. It brings this band's previous work. It buries their previous work to me. And that album is Toys in the Attic. Like Ethan said, boy, man, that fucking album kicks off and it just fucking rips your nuts off. It is like fucking crazy. It's like, I'm like, whoa, like, dude, that's like one of the hardest songs of this year. And like, that came out in 1975. Toys in the Attic. That's crazy. That's like one of the hardest songs of this year. So I don't know. I just imagine myself like putting that album on. Like I was just like, oh, I guess I'll try this new album. The new album by Aerosmith. I heard the first single, so like you put it on, you like drop the needle, and you're like, I'm in the dungeon. And I'm like, whoa, shit! Like that would be amazing. I wish I could go back and listen to some of these albums for the first time back in the day.
Yeah.
It'd be so fun. And I think that album has so many great songs. I mean, again, one of these albums that you hear on classic rock, tons of even the album tracks, like Big 10-inch Record and Uncle Salty and No More and all these like great songs. But Sweet Emotion, fucking amazing. This starts out with Toys in the Attic, the first song on the album. Side 2 starts out with Sweet Emotion. And I'm like, oh man, it's awesome. And then you just have these killer songs just building up like all throughout the album. I don't know. I love the album. I think it's fantastic. And I don't think the band ever got, I mean, they had some great albums. They had their resurgence back in the, even the 80s and then the early 90s, but it's like, they were never better, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Drugs kind of destroyed them. But, so overall, what are your guys' thoughts on 1975?
Well, Josh, I think you have a really interesting idea. Like, we need to get a time machine and we need to go back and create our own YouTube reaction channel. So people listening to these amazing albums when they first hear them, like, we just got to get onto the time machine technology.
I love some of the, so there's a couple of people that I trust when I see that shit. And then there's some people like listening to Bohemian Rhapsody for the first time. And they're like, and I'm like, stop it. Just stop. Just fucking stop it. And it's always like this black guy going, oh my God, bro. And I'm like, stop it, dude. Like, come on, man.
Yeah,
like,
ass clowns.
Stop it. Like,
I know.
Stop.
Tasting water for the first time.
Oh, wow. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Tastes like nothing. I don't know. So this year had some of the biggest albums of the year. So most critics consider a lot of these artists to be their best albums, like Bob Dylan's Blood on the Tracks, Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run, Elton John's Captain Fantastic. Not only do a lot of people consider that to be his best album, it's certainly his best album cover. Kiss Alive, I know it's a live album, but Kiss Alive, everyone considers that their greatest album in their discography, but it's a live album. Paul Simon's Still Crazy After All These Years, Neil Young, Tonight's the Night. And there's like Tommy Bolin, like the teaser is like the Motley Crue. You remember She's a teaser. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, whoa.
Was it
That's crazy.
Ian Hunter? What was the one that had like
Ian Hunter.
Twice shot. I'm like, wait a minute. I had no idea. I thought Great White wrote that song in the 80s.
Yeah.
No idea that was a guy. That was mind-blowing.
He's also the guy that did Cleveland Rocks, which came out in 1979. Yeah, Dr. Feelgood. Dude, I really liked Dr. Feelgood. Like, that was like a kind of like a punky kind of band, and they had like a couple albums on this list, and I was like, dude, this is a band that I really, really like. I was like, this is really cool. They almost made one of my runner-ups. So Hawkwind,
that was
Lemmy.
wild.
Lemmy was in Hawkwind. I'm like,
Yeah.
I know Lemmy was in this. I mean, obviously you don't usually come from nowhere, but Lemmy was in that band. That was crazy.
That was wild.
And Roy Wood, Mustard. I almost thought that was going to be like on a John kind of thing, because like Roy Wood was like from ELO, and he kind of went off to do his like own thing. It very kind of sounds like ELO actually.
I actually like some of it to start with, and then
I mean, the album's called Mustard, John. Mustard.
Yeah. Mustard's a condiment. I've heard of it.
No, but Ethan, I almost thought that you were going to select Budgie.
Just because they have Bread Fan?
You know, when I was talking about how modern, what's her name sounded?
Was another album
Patti Smith. This band sounded so modern for like the rock that was to come. And I didn't realize that they were such a big influence to bands like Metallica and other like really hard rock bands and stuff like that to come in the 80s. But yeah, so yeah, Bread Fan. Yeah, so
that's a classic.
But guys, right before we end this list, I have to give Lee Matlock's top 5 real quick.
Oh, dude, that's right.
Yeah.
Please.
So I first asked my dad, I was like, hey, you're fresh out of Vietnam. I got to give you first. You want to do this? He's like, I'm going to opt out. Let the guys do it. I like listening to them better. So, but he's like, I'll tell you what though, I'll give you my list. So my dad's list goes like this. At number 5, we have the Doobie Brothers, Stampede. And he said, absolute fantastic guitar work on this album. Very short and sweet. Very short and sweet.
Yeah.
Number 4, Led Zeppelin's Physical Graffiti.
Good call.
Great songwriting and power as well from this band. Number 3, Fleetwood Mac's self-titled Fleetwood Mac album. More of the same great stuff. Great writing from this band, which is, my dad's come a long way because he wasn't a huge Fleetwood Mac guy of the new Fleetwood Mac, the newer Fleetwood Mac. Number 2, Toys in the Attic. All he says is, this is it. This is all he says. Power.
I like it.
I'm like, all right. And then at number 1, which is not shocking to anybody that knows my dad, The Eagles, One of These Nights.
Oh, yeah.
It says more of some of the same great stuff. So,
Yeah, they had some
Lee
good
Matlock.
songs on there.
Lee Matlock's top 5 greatest albums of 1975. Gentlemen, are there any other thoughts that you have? I think
I wish we
we
knew
said it all.
Tina's top 5.
I don't have Tina's top 5.
That's
She'd
a
be
shame.
like, you know what she would do? She'd like, I don't know. I don't know. It would be Queen. It's like, so Sarah's number one is probably Queen. Jen's number 1 is probably Queen. I'm guessing.
All these amazing ladies, similar thoughts. I guess whatever.
Yeah, whenever I go through these lists, one of the things I always think of, I was like, will Lee Matlock be proud of the choice I just made?
The legend.
Yeah. And yeah, it had some of the craziest mix of albums on his CD stand in your living room growing up.
Yeah.
I'm like, Hadaway.
You're like, oh, sweet, Led Zeppelin 2. You're like, oh, cool. What's the next one? Hadaway.
Yeah.
What is love? You're like, interesting. All right.
It was awesome.
It's very eclectic.
Yeah. And we kind of touched on this just in some of our album descriptions, but it's so weird. It's like the middle of the decade. You got albums that sound like they're from the late 60s. You got albums that almost sound like they're right there at the early 80s.
Way ahead of their time.
Yeah, you just got stuff that's all over the place, and it's pretty amazing to hear stuff that almost sounds like it was done in the last decade or 20 years or something like that.
Yeah.
I wish music today was a lot more like that, because I just kept thinking the whole time, like, there's just so much variety and wild and cool stuff. Like, so many things that sound so different, and yet some of it that clearly sounded like you could tell maybe similar producers or something, where there's a little, but it's just like today everything feels so shoehorned into just such a limited scope of
It's different too, because I hear all these. I hear a lot of artists talk about how they wish that they grew up in a different era, because now you can't even get a record company to even look at you unless you have a certain amount of followers on your social media, and they're like, okay, that's fucking stupid, man. Like that's stupid. How about if the song is good, then sign them, but there's no record like industry like there was. So there's that.
Yeah.
So this is, I mean, we're talking mid 70s into the, like, you know, into the 2000. Like,
yeah,
we're talking money. There's like a lot of money in this business. So there's a lot of competition, a lot of money going around, lots of Coke coming up in the next few years here. Lots of Coke. So
we're kind of in the tail end of the era where you could listen to an album for the first time without knowing what you're going to hear. And I remember a couple albums in the 90s that you recommended you heard were good, but we had no clue what they were going to sound like. We got the Foo Fighters' first album and Weezer's first album. We never heard this band, and either of them. And we threw on the one, and we're like, every song we're like, wow, man, this is awesome.
Yeah. Throw
on the other album, we're like, damn, man, we got 2 good albums at once.
Yeah, dude. Yep. It's kind of cool that we can go back and listen to these albums, but a lot of these albums are kind of like lost, like in the mix. So you have to go back and do. But we have access to go do that. So you have access to like just millions of songs.
I love streaming
so
for that
it's
reason,
kind of cool.
Man. It's just wild. You can look up anything you want and find it and listen to it.
Yeah. So if you're watching, what are your favorite albums? Comment somewhere wherever you're watching this. You can comment below, give us your top 5, maybe your runner-ups, and let us know if you disagree or agree, or most people will probably pick Frank Zappa as their top album. I don't know.
Probably. Yeah. I think John McDonald's most people. I don't know.
There you go. You never know.
Don't eat yellow snow.
That's the great thing about rock music and opinions and assholes. Everyone has one, right?
Yeah.
I don't.
All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you for both coming on again and having a good chat about rock music. Is there anything better?
Oh, it's the best.
No.
Hanging out with the boys on a Friday night talking rock and roll. I mean, come on.
Let's do it again soon.
Diet Dr. Shasta.
Vodka and Dr. Shasta.
Well, that
All
just
right.
sounds like a good time.
All right, for Johnny and Ethan, I'm Josh. And as always, thank you for being a friend.